Thank you all for coming. Today I want to talk about the postpartum 5 universal needs or 5 universal rules or laws for a postpartum mother. So this is a really cool way that you can create your postpartum plan to make sure that you are getting all of your needs met. A lot of the times we jump into postpartum and we just feel like so overwhelmed, right? It's like by all the things that need to happen, taking care of ourselves and our babies. And it's kind of hard to figure out like, what is it that I'm missing? What is it that I'm not getting? So this is a framework that can give you an understanding around all the different needs that you have. And then you can create a plan from this place to help you meet each of these needs. So I find that it makes postpartum preparation so much more simple if we can just like write down a list of each of these 5 needs and go check. Yes, I feel good about each of those needs. I have a plan. I want to talk a little bit about the postpartum period. So postpartum is defined maybe by, like some people say it's a few months. Postpartum is forever, right? It's forever. You're always in postpartum because you have a baby and then, you just are in that after baby stage. And that's what postpartum means. It's after baby. But what I have found through my own research and by following teachers that I really love, like Kimberly Ann Johnson, who have studied postpartum traditions in many different cultures all around the world, they found that in opposite sides of the planet, there are these ancient traditions that follow the same 5 steps. It's so cool. So for example, one of these steps is warmth. And in China, they have these specific warming practices that they can do. What is it called? It's with mugwort. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they take mugwort and will burn it on a bowl that's like placed on your belly with blankets. And the heat is meant to like penetrate deep into your womb and into your abdomen to help bring heat into that part of your body. There are other traditions like in Australia where they take the bark from trees, that it's a kind of bark that you can kind of unwrap almost like a fabric and heat it over the fire and then wrap that around the mom. It's very cool. So in all these different places around the world, they found that we have found through research that these same 5 steps were intact, just in their own variation and in their own details. It's very interesting. So this is a great approach for you to take in preparing for your baby, because we can make sure that we're not just like getting your physical needs met, but that like your holistic approach is being taken, right? That your emotional and spiritual and physical needs, all of those things are being looked at. And this is so vital because the way that you feel during postpartum completely shapes your entire parenting journey. It's like a portal that we're going through where we are so incredibly sensitive and vulnerable, and our body is going through so much healing. So the 5 universal postpartum needs are extended rest. That's number 1. Number 2 is eating nourishing food. Number 3 is loving touch. Number 4 is supportive community or connection with wise women. And number 5 is connection with nature. So let's talk about number 1, which is extended rest. So this is the only opportunity that you have to give yourself this gift of extended rest, right? Like this is the only opportunity that you have to let yourself fully, deeply rest. Because after like weeks and months go by, we're kind of like back into life with our babies, and we're not just, giving ourselves opportunities for extended rest periods, unless like you get sick or something. Like me, like my husband took care of everything this morning. I have 3 kids under 6, so it was chaos for him, but he did it so I can rest in bed, which was lovely. But like otherwise, there aren't really many opportunities that we get in life to have an extended rest period. And it's so important that we rest after birth, because after you have your baby, your body is regaining strength and rebuilding blood. You're going through an organ realignment process. So all of your organs are realigning. You're going through a fluid recalibration because your blood volume increases by 50%. So after you have your baby, all that extra fluid in your body has to clear through hormonal, like we have hormonal shifts that lead to hot flashes. So we kind of get sweaty postpartum. So through sweating, through peeing, you'll have like a fluid recalibration. Your uterus is shrinking back down to its original size. So you might feel like you're having some like period cramp sensations after you give birth. I would take ibuprofen kind of like immediately after my babies came out. I was like, give me the ibuprofen because my uterus, like it did feel pretty uncomfortable, especially for the first few days. And then it started to get easier. But your uterus, you know, especially over the first 10 days, is doing a lot of work shrinking back down to its original size. We're also healing vaginal tissue. We're navigating plummeting hormone levels. So as your placenta releases from the uterine wall, your body has these really high peak levels of hormones that suddenly go boop and they just drop, like completely drop. And that leads us into this journey of a big hormone recalibration shift where we go on this long journey of like kind of balancing our hormones. And that hormone imbalance can lead to feeling like insomnia or feeling anxious or having some baby blues, feeling really hormonal, feeling really sad. Like emotionally, we can be very sensitive at this time. And we're also undergoing major structural shifts in the brain. So your brain actually changes a little bit and shrinks. It's super interesting to reorient the energy to like basically send more energy to parts of the brain that make you a more sensitive and attentive caregiver, while like taking energy from other places that aren't very necessary, like memory. So we are in a different physiology after we have a baby, a completely different physiology. And if we can recognize that we're going through a very temporary but very important and vulnerable phase in our life, and we give ourselves the rest, that just helps all of those functions I just listed out unfold so much easier. There are many different traditions all around the world where there are specific practices woven into place to support the mother in resting. And it's very interesting if you look at these ancient traditions from different sides of the planet, they both followed about a 5-week pattern of rest, like a 5-week theme. So in the Western medical model, like we have our baby and then we're sent home and then we don't get any care, right? And that is one of the reasons why maternal mortality rates are high in the US, is because there's a care gap. And if you have a midwife, your midwife will be coming to your house and giving you care, if that's what your arrangement with your midwife is. And for most home birth midwives, that is what they do. But if you're birthing in a hospital, it's unlikely that you'll have that care just given to you, but you deserve to have that care. We need to have that care. So it's just important to recognize like, oh, there are some flaws in the Western medical model. There are flaws in our culture. We have a very it's a capitalistic culture, right? So like there are cultural expectations and workplace pressures for us to like just get back into the swing of things and to bounce back. And that is so toxic. It is so unrealistic. No, it's not biologically possible to bounce back. But if you want to be a healthy, happy, vibrant person with energy and you want to feel good just in your life in general, choosing to take the opportunity to rest despite the cultural pressures to bounce back, despite workplace pressures, despite household dynamics between like man and woman, or just like the person who's birthing and breastfeeding babies being the one to do all those things. Like if we can navigate some of that and see how a lot of that is unrealistic and work with our support people to create shifts in our life to give us an opportunity to rest, that is the best gift that you can give yourself and ultimately give your children. Because when you choose to rest after you give birth, you are investing in your lifelong health. And being a mother of 3 kids, I have found that whenever I am feeling like bleh, my kids feel bleh. Whenever I am dysregulated, my kids are dysregulated, because the mother is the center of the home. So when we choose to center the mother, that doesn't mean the mother is better than anyone or more important than anyone. It just means that during this sensitive time, the mother needs to get their needs met so that they can re-emerge back into life with a full cup. So there's this quote, the first 40 days postpartum impact our health for the next 40 years. And I don't know if this is the exact word for word quote by Kimberly Ann Johnson. Now that I'm reading it, it could be a little bit different. But Kimberly Ann Johnson describes that your nervous system after you give birth is like wet concrete. So basically, we are so open and so vulnerable that anything that we experience during that time has an opportunity to really go deep into our being. And I have found that to be true after having a really hard postpartum with my first. My husband went back to work at 1 week. I tore. The people in my life did not understand that asking for help was a good thing. They thought that asking for help was like a sign of weakness. It's like a generational thing, I think. But like my grandparents, even my parents, they were like, get back on your feet. Like, why are you wanting to? Like, no one understood. And I felt so alone. And I had a really hard time recovering. And that experience of feeling unsupported, it just hit me so deep. And I still today struggle with some things around parenting and my relationship to parenthood, because in that initial postpartum, I was building my relationship to myself as a mother. I was building my relationship to parenthood and understanding what my role is. And in my initiation, which is what birth and postpartum is, it's an initiation into a new role in life. In my initiation, I was experiencing abandonment and I wasn't getting my needs met. And a lot of that had to do with the people I was choosing to trust in my life. And that's like a whole nother thing that I don't have to go down right now. But looking back, I can take responsibility for some of the choices that I made that contributed to that kind of experience. But I'm telling you this now because it's so important to recognize when we go through an initiation process, surrounded by people who love us, who can support us, choosing to, despite cultural pressures, to choose what is best for our long-term wellness, we initiate ourselves into parenthood in such a better way. And it can impact your entire life, your health for your whole life. So that was rest. And actually, before I go on a little bit, I just want to say a plan maybe, or just some guidelines for rest are to, after you have your baby, if you give birth at home, just cuddle up in bed and then stay there. If you come home from the hospital or the birth center, hop into bed, get skin to skin with your baby, and plan to be in your bed for weeks if possible. Everyone has different situations, and access to parental leave is kind of far and few in between, right, in the US. So the kind of support that we can access is really, and the amount of time we can spend in bed is dependent on a lot of those external factors. But if we can get creative and go does anyone have miles that they'd be willing to donate to me so that I can fly my aunt in town for a weekend, find ways to ask for help and get creative with our community and see how we can stretch out that time is so impactful and so helpful. If you can stay in bed for several weeks, see if you can do it for 40 days if that's possible. That's what many women have been doing around the world for hundreds of years. And there's a purpose to that. Another take that I see is 5 days in the bed, 5 days around the bed, and 5 days around the room. That's more of a Western take, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. The point is that we're not jumping back in too quickly, that we're really resting. We're just chilling in bed, chilling on the rocking chair. And this is important because you want your uterus to heal. You want to stop bleeding, that internal wound where the uterus, or where the placenta sheared off from the uterine wall, that wound needs to heal, and our pelvic floor needs to heal. So if we're standing and walking around and carrying a baby and picking up our toddler, we're not giving the pelvic floor a chance to heal. We're not giving that internal wound a chance to heal, and that can lead to bleeding. It can lead to a prolonged healing process. It can lead to pelvic floor dysfunction. That can be prevented simply by resting in bed. So rule number 2 is nourishing food. And so warm, easily digestible, nutrient-dense foods provide the foundation for healing tissues, replenishing blood, supporting lactation, and regulating hormones and regulating your mood. So let's talk about why nutrition matters so much during postpartum. We don't eat the best in the West to begin with. And then when you are postpartum, it's kind of like you just are surviving and eating what you can. And, with my first, I remember I knew that I needed to eat warm, nutrient-dense foods, but I didn't have anyone to cook for me. And I didn't really think about doing freezer meals beforehand. I think if I did, that would have been really helpful. And so I had a friend who would bring me groceries sometimes, and that was so helpful. And I would just have her bring me a canned soup, like a bunch of canned soup, and I just ate canned chicken soup all the time. And it's like not the best, but it was better than granola bars and potato chips or whatever. Like it was just such an easy thing to throw in the pot and just eat. And at least I was eating vegetables and protein and something warm. But with my second and third, I got the book, The First 40 Days by Hen U. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. It's O-U. And I highly recommend that you buy that book and take pictures of the recipes and send it to everyone who is going to be supporting you with meals postpartum and say, these are the meals that I want. And that is so, so important and so helpful, because if you're getting the right nutrition postpartum, that is going to enhance your healing. We're going to focus on healing the tissue. So collagen-rich foods can help rebuild damaged tissue from tearing. We want to replenish the blood with iron-rich foods and prevent anemia, which is really important if you're breastfeeding, because if your iron levels are low, that can impact your baby. Foods that are supportive to your liver is great, because if your liver can be stimulated to process old hormones, that can help with hormonal balance in general. And then if you're planning to breastfeed, supporting lactation is important too. And when we have nutrient-dense foods, that is supportive to lactation. So here are some key components to be aware of. One is that we want the food to be warm, because after you have a baby, your baby acts as a heater in your body. And so your heater leaves, and all of a sudden there is all this space in your body that doesn't have that heater anymore. And this creates a possibility for something called in the Ayurvedic modality, wind energy to settle into your body. And you might be like, Victoria, what the hell does that mean? It's basically this idea that temperature plays a really big role in our health, and everyone has a different composition, a different disposition, and the way that I am a person that leads more towards cold, so I have to really put a lot more warm food in me, and other people lean towards cold and they need to lean towards warm, and they need to have some cooler foods to kind of balance them out. So this idea of warmth is really important. It's don't go outside in the winter without a coat or you'll catch a cold. We need to be warm in order to be healthy, because warmth brings blood flow and warmth allows for our body to heal. So if you are focusing on taking in warm food and you're keeping your belly warm, that is going to support blood flow, it's going to support circulation and healing, and it's going to protect you from illness. One tip that I recommend everyone have after they have their baby is a warm water bottle or a heating pad, and keep that on your belly if you don't have your warm baby on your belly skin to skin, right? Have a water bottle and keep that on your belly, especially at night. Maybe sleep with a warm water bottle on your belly to help bring some heat into that space. But we also want to be taking in warm food. If you're taking in cold food, you have to expend a lot of energy to warm that food up, and there's already so much energy going to all the different parts of your body already for healing and for milk production. So we want to make it as easy on the body as possible. We also want to get foods that are easy to digest, because if we are taking foods that are harder to digest, it just takes a lot more energy for the body to get the nutrients. So soups and stews and bone broths are really great because they conserve digestive energy, and when you take them in, your body's able to access those nutrients really quickly. In Chinese traditions, they typically remove heavy meats initially in the first few days and will focus more on fish, and then will implement more of the heavy meats like pork and beef a little bit later. I can't remember exactly the days, the schedule for that, but that book, The First 40 Days, does go over that. And then the next is we want to focus on nutrient dense. So, collagen for tissue repair, healthy fats for brain function and cell membranes, and minerals for blood rebuilding and for milk production. So there are, I talked a little bit about Ayurveda, but there are like specific traditions all around the world, and they have specific foods that they will give a postpartum mother. And it's very, very cool to look at. And this is why I recommend the book, because if you were to look at that book, it teaches you about all the specific Chinese traditions, and all those recipes are made with ingredients for the postpartum mother. Yeah, and also I just want to say that receiving meals is so supportive, and it feels so good for other people to make you a home cooked meal. This is a way that we can really like show care and to also receive care. And a lot of people do not know that it's okay to ask for help postpartum, and they do not know how to ask for help. And lots of us have been taught to believe that, like my whole family told me to believe that asking for help was like a weakness. And I had the wisdom, thankfully, to be like, no, that doesn't feel right. I know that I deserve to have support postpartum. This is a really big deal. And in my entire life, how long am I going to be alive? Maybe 70, 80, 90 years. Like in my whole life, I have 3 children and I spend 1 month, and that's a total of 3 months in my entire life that I'm resting in bed and asking for help. That does not seem like a big ask, especially because I just gave my family this gift of this beautiful child, and now the family can give back to me. So asking for help with food. If you don't know how to ask for help, asking for help with food, I think, is a really great way to do it. You can make a meal train. You can ask people to like drop food off on your porch. People want to help a lot of the time, but they don't know how. And by saying like, being really direct and saying, I would love some help with food. That would mean so much to me. Here are the recipes that I'd love for you to make, and you can sign up in the meal train, or you can drop it off on our porch, or whatever you want to say. Will you do this? And having people give you a commitment and say yes, that's really important. So we're relying on people that have committed to doing that. So here is a list of some of the things that we want you to focus on eating. Number 1 is warming porridge or oatmeal. Oats are really great for milk supply. You can add butter or ghee or coconut oil so you have sustained energy, because healthy fats can sustain your energy. Soups and stews, so you can make a roast, you can make chicken soup, anything like that. Those are packed typically, especially with bone broths, they're packed with minerals. If you are a vegan person, you can make like mineral rich broths with mushrooms and seaweed and things like that are so good for you. Slow cooked meats will have a lot of natural fats. And also you can look into seasonal and ancestral foods. So look at the comfort foods in your heritage that make you feel so like yummy, ooey gooey. Yes, like I feel so good when I'm eating these foods. It reminds me of my childhood. My grandmother would make me these meals. That's something that's important to look at too. And another thing I wanted to note is that hydration is super important after you have a baby, especially if you're making milk. So coconut water, bone broth, herbal teas like nettle, raspberry leaf, alfalfa, dandelion root, fresh pressed juice, and kombucha. All of those will help you stay hydrated. My favorite drink, and each time I had a baby, I was like, yes, I'm so excited to be for postpartum because I'm going to get to drink all of this tea. It's so good. It's red date goji berry tea, and that recipe is in the book. You get red dates and goji berries and like simmer them on the stove and drink the tea. It's so sweet and delicious, and it's replenishing for the blood. So my family was just constantly bringing me like, here's a mug of herbal nettle tea. Here's a mug of bone broth. Here's a mug of like the red date tea. And in addition to that, I've always had like a water bottle with electrolytes. I just avoid electrolytes with any artificial ingredients. So the brands that I really love is Ultima and the brand Nun. Is it Numb or Nun? I think it's Nun. Anyway, I like that brand too. And electrolytes are really great to drink after you have a baby, especially if you are feeding the baby from your body, just try to not let the water be cold. If you can, have it just be room temperature. That is ideal. We would take our kettle and just hit it to boil and then fill it up with the cold water from our water filter, and then just add like a little bit of the boiling water into that just to like warm it up a tiny bit. So what we want to avoid is cold foods and drinks, because the body has to expend all this extra energy to warm up cold things. And so we want to avoid that. Avoid beans and lentils if you can. If you are a person that loves beans and lentils and they don't seem to ever bother you, then maybe this isn't for you. But beans and lentils typically can be gas causing. If you are eating something that's making you gassy, chances are it will also make your baby gassy. I had a spoonful of hummus with my first baby and she was so gassy and so frustrated. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm apparently like really sensitive, and so was she. Gas causing vegetables like cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage can cause gassiness. So you might want to avoid those. And then processed oils and also plastic. Processed oils like, like vegetable oils that you would get from the store. If you cook with those, we're eating those fats, and the fats from processed vegetable oils typically aren't that good for you, or they have a higher likelihood of having toxins in them. Cold pressed olive oil and organic avocado oil and coconut oil. Those are the oils that are so much better for your body. And then in addition to that, grass-fed butter and ghee. Those are great oils and great fats that are really good for your body. So you want to eat those ones. Also with plastic, if we can just tell people, like if they're bringing over food, just bring it in a mason jar instead. Try to store your food in glass if you can. It's just more important, like if people are heating you a soup and they take a boiling soup and they put it into a plastic container, that the heat can seep chemicals from the plastic. So we just want to try to focus on having our food be in glass if possible when it's warm. And I just threw this in here, a little golden milk recipe. So this is another thing that's really yummy that you can drink after you have your baby. Maybe take a quick screenshot. You can also DM me on school in the academy if you want, and I can send this to you. Turmeric is great because it's an anti-inflammatory. You just have to be careful that you don't spill it on your bed because turmeric can stain. But it's really good for you to drink it, and it's super yummy and delicious. So the next thing I want to talk about is warming spices. So cardamom, cumin, cinnamon, and ginger are very common spices that I see in postpartum recipes. Fennel is another one. One mom brought me fennel seeds just to chew on in between meals as a way to just reduce any gassiness for myself and for my baby, and that was really sweet. So you can drink cardamom, cinnamon, and ginger, in a drink. You can add cumin to soups and stews. Cumin is anti-inflammatory. Cinnamon helps with blood sugar balance. Cardamom and ginger help with digestion. And all these spices are warming. So going back to Ayurveda, when we're taking in warming foods and warming herbs and warming spices, that helps produce more warmth in the body. And that's what we want to focus on. Okay, so rule number 3 is loving touch. So loving touch supports our body in processing fluid and old hormones. It also helps us to release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone that is so important for labor, but it's also important for breastfeeding, for emotional well-being, for healing our body, right? Like after we have a baby, our uterus needs to shrink down to its normal size, and it does that through having oxytocin. Oxytocin also helps us to balance our hormones. So my husband and I listened to Kimberly Ann Johnson's book on Audible together. It's called The Fourth Trimester. Highly recommend it. And she explained that, and he was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like my role for postpartum is to touch you and make you and cuddle you and bring you yummy drinks and say nice things to you and like make you release oxytocin. Like my job is to support you in feeling yummy, like yummy, ooey gooey good, so that you can release oxytocin, and that's going to help your physiology and that's going to help you feel better. And I was like, yes, please, sir. release oxytocin in me. So touch is a really great way to do that. So when you receive touch, your body releases oxytocin, which is that hormone of love and bonding and connection. So this is why we want to just postpartum be in bed skin to skin with our baby for weeks. And some people might think that's weird, and that's their problem. Being in bed skin to skin with your baby is how generation after generation of mothers have addressed postpartum, especially in these cultures where there are these specific traditions woven into place to support the long-term wellness of the mother. And being skin to skin with baby has so many benefits, not only for the baby, but also for you. But in addition to that, you can be receiving touch from other people, not just holding your baby, but touch from other people also helps you to feel like you're being supported. And specific touch like massage can help like process old fluid, can help move the lymph, things like that are really helpful. So there are lots of different bodywork practices. A warm oil massage is one in Ayurvedic tradition that is used. Pelvic floor therapy can be helpful to do a little bit further down the line when you're kind of back into life again. Like after 6 weeks, I'm not saying you're back into life at 6 weeks, but probably after 6 weeks, it would be okay to do pelvic floor therapy. You can also do a little bit of pelvic floor therapy on your own at home with yourself or your partner, just a little bit of like exploration and mapping of like what's going on in here, and is there tension in any part of my vagina. And if we notice like just with one finger applying a little bit of pressure, like, oh, it feels kind of like there's some pain or discomfort, adding a little bit of massage while you work on like relaxing, sometimes that can be really helpful. But this isn't something we want to do until you are done bleeding. Usually waiting at least 6 weeks is ideal for any kind of penetration after birth, because we want you to not get an infection, and the infection risk is possible when there's still an open wound in your body, if that makes sense. Also, just having your partner every day, or your doula, if you have a postpartum doula, or your grandma, or if there's a person around you who just wants to sit next to you on your bed and hang out and chat and massage your foot for 15 minutes. That just feels so good to have someone give you a little bit of body work. But you can also, have someone come to your house and do some cranial sacral therapy, or have a postpartum body worker come over and do like a warming treatment on you, or a closing of the bone ceremony if they are trained in that. And it is worth, if you can, trying to like see if someone wants to gift you that financially, or seeing if you can save up a little bit to get a little bit of body work after you have your baby. It can feel really good. This is a couple more fun things that I thought I would add around touch. One is some touch to soothe your baby. So there are these 5 S's for touch to help soothe your baby. One is to swaddle your baby. One is to put them in a side or stomach position when they are belly to belly, or their belly is like on your forearm. I kind of call that the dad hold. I feel like dads usually hold their babies like that, like with one arm where the baby's belly is on the dad's arm. Or you could hold your baby upright with them putting pressure on their belly, like on your chest. That can sometimes help if their bellies are a little bit uncomfortable. The other S is like shushing, doing like rhythmic sounds, because sometimes those sounds can like mimic the heartbeat sounds that they were hearing inside the womb. Swinging, which is like gentle motion that you can use to help like soothe the baby. And then sucking. Some babies are super fussy and they just want to suck. And I just want to say that your baby using your boob as a pacifier is not a bad habit. It is biologically normal for a newborn baby to want to be on your boob for comfort, and also for milk and for sleep and for all that stuff. And as long as you are okay with it, there is nothing wrong. You can create associations, like breastfeeding associations for sleep, when your baby is 3 months old. And so at that point, when they're 3-month-old, if you don't want your baby to like need your boob for sleep, then you can teach them alternative ways to fall asleep. And if you're in my coaching program, that is something I can help you with, because I stay with my moms for as long as they need postpartum. But I just want to say that in the first 3 months, it's biologically normal for your baby to fall asleep on your boob, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is partner involvement. So like I said, your partner could like rub your foot, but just cuddling you and like holding you or stroking your shoulders, brushing your hair, all of those little things can just like feel so good. Okay, so the next is postpartum doula support. So doulas can provide loving touch, they can provide emotional support, and they can be so helpful in postpartum. And a lot of people don't realize that their insurance covers postpartum doulas. Amazing. So I would look into that and see. There's also many communities have free postpartum doulas. I would explore the resources in your community. I would call your insurance and see if getting a postpartum doula is a possibility for you. Your postpartum doula, they're not just here to like interact with you. They can just clean your house and you don't even have to see them. And it's really amazing. Or they can come and give you emotional support and body work and things like that. So, yeah, so I feel like kind of covers everything. Schedule body work if you can, 10 minutes of foot rubs, or maybe look into getting a doula. And so that is it for loving touch. Rule number 4 is the presence of a supportive community. So there is something really helpful and so profound when it comes to like navigating all of this on your own, whether you're giving birth for the first time, whether you are, you have 5 children and you just have someone who has gone through that threshold of having multiple children or becoming a mother for the first time, and they have tools and they have wisdom and they can support you. Community matters so much postpartum. And I will say that after my second birth, we were really committed to following all of these rules. And I didn't stay in bed for 5 weeks. I did with my third. I think I stayed in bed for 3 weeks with my second. And I had those traditional meals, and it was a beautiful postpartum. But there were times where, like, even with my husband being present, I love him. He's one of my best friends. But I was like, you're not doing it for me, sir. You are like, you're great, but like, I'm not getting what I need from you. I need something else. And I realized like my midwife would come over and I'd be like, oh, that's what I needed. Like I needed a wise woman. I needed someone who could get me, who had been through this before, and who could just understand and give me tools and insights and validation that my husband, never could. So you can look into family members who have had a baby before, people who you feel like you can trust, who you feel safe around. Looking into your community too. There are new mom circles and lactation support. There's also professional support with like doulas. You can hire, if you're giving birth in a hospital, you can hire a midwife for postpartum care, which is very cool and something that a lot of people don't know that they can do. I highly recommend that if it's a possibility. Sometimes midwives can bill insurance, and so wouldn't that be amazing if you could have a really loving, wise, person just like come over to your house and check on you and check on your baby and provide care. So look into some of that and find people who are like safe, loving people who you feel like could give you that validation and support after you have your baby. So there's this idea, in many cultures around the world that, multi-generational households are there for a reason, because they provide like built-in postpartum support. There's grandmothers and there's aunts. In China, to my understanding, it is common for after someone to have a baby for the aunt and sister and mother to move into the house and create this like multi-generational household for that period of time. So we live in isolated households in the West, and it's pretty uncommon to live with someone in your family. But I just want to really emphasize that we are not meant to do this alone, and we typically do need more support postpartum than we think that we need. Having people in your corner who can come over and give you that kind of support and try to like fill in some of that role as much as possible can be really, really helpful. So the next piece that I want to talk about is like the importance of overcoming isolation. A lot of moms feel really isolated after they have their baby because we're just in these isolated environments. So looking at your community and seeing like what resources are available to me. Also, once again, if you're in my coaching program, coming to the postpartum calls are really, really helpful. There's one mama who has been with me since early in her pregnancy. She had a great birth and she's been in my postpartum group for 4 months, and she comes like religiously every single week. And she's like, she said to me the other day, I don't know what I would do without these calls. It's just like every week there's someone who can be there for you and who can guide you through newborn sleep and breastfeeding and pumping and anything that's coming up. And that is so, so, so valuable. I feel like oh, there we go. Okay. I like messed up something. So feel like I talked about that. I do want to say, when it comes to your community, it is totally okay to have boundaries, and it's really important to have boundaries. Okay, so we do want to invite people to come into our space and to support us in whatever capacity feels right to you. But at the same time, we also need to have the right boundaries to keep us safe. And there are some people, like my grandmother, who wanted to come over after my third baby was born and was like, demanding to hold the baby and was saying like, this is my baby. Like I have the right to, I'm entitled to hold this baby. And I was like, it's not your baby. This is actually my baby. And he is so sensitive, my third baby, that if I let anyone else hold him, even his father, he's going to freak out. And I am not interested in my baby feeling unsafe and freaking out. I just like want to give him the slower transition. He just really needed to be with me longer than my other babies did. So we are not wanting to host anyone. We are not wanting, that's this point here, we are not wanting to let other people hold the baby if you don't want them to hold the baby. I will say that it is well researched that limiting the amount of people that hold your baby reduces their risk for illness and reduces their risk for newborn eye infections. People can carry bacteria. And so just limiting that is very reasonable and totally okay if that's what you want to do. You can have people leave offerings at the door. So just because someone's bringing you food does not mean that you owe them anything. It doesn't mean that you owe them a visit. It doesn't mean that you need to host them or anything like that. They can just drop it off and you can catch up with them another time. So what I invite you to do, like I mentioned before, is communicate very, very clearly and say, this is what I want postpartum. This is what I would love your support with. Can you please support me with that? And just assign people the things and have a conversation with them and just be vulnerable and honest. And some people are like, whoa, you're asking for help, because they just like don't know. But like, how cool is it that we have an opportunity to create better experiences for ourselves postpartum and to write a better story around our own postpartum experiences, that we believe that we were worthy enough to ask for help, that we knew asking for help is an investment in our health. And so then like we are just creating a better narrative in the culture for our children's children. So we're doing the work and like the people pleasing shit, the I can't ask for help bullcrap, like all that stuff that is like, wow, like that feels like really intense maybe and like emotionally charged that we have. If we can do some of that inner work to let that go and to be like, oh, like it's okay to ask for help. You can even say like, I feel anxious about asking for help, but I know that it's important and I trust you and I feel safe with you and I'm going to ask you anyway. We're stopping those people-pleasing tendencies within ourselves. We are stopping this pattern, this belief that like it's weak or whatever the heck to ask for help, and seeing that asking for help is actually like it takes courage and strength. And then we're teaching that to our children, right? Like through the stories that we're carrying forward. So it's really important in the reshaping of our culture, you know, not only for you, but for the generations to come. So yeah, you can start a meal train. You can create a list of tasks, prepare some guidelines before birth. So you could say like, here's where the cleaning supplies are, or whatever. Here's where these things are. So people kind of know what is expected and where those things are. If it's like, you know, you want someone to come over and walk your dog, you can just say, here's where the leash is and poop bags and this is where we go, and just kind of have some of that stuff written out beforehand, especially if you have another kiddo. I just wrote out like a sheet of paper that was like, here's my kids' schedules, and here's when I pick Sequoia up from school, and blah, blah, blah. Her lunch needs to be like new every day, and here's the things I put in her lunch. And I just gave that to grandma who was taking over, and she just had instructions, and it was really helpful. So okay, rule number 5 is connection with nature. This one often gets overlooked, but it's a really, really important piece to not skip over. So why nature matters postpartum. Nature helps us to regulate our nervous system. I like to tell moms to treat themselves after they have their baby like they are a newborn themselves. So we want to not be looking at the news. We don't want to be like watching scary shows or like putting a lot of scary, stressful things into our mind, and instead give yourself the environment to integrate your birth, to create like a happy foundation, a positive foundation, a relationship to yourself as a mother, process all the things that might be coming up. Treat yourself with a lot of simplicity and gentleness. And nature just naturally brings that nervous system regulation and feelings of peace and helps us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. So you can just sit outside with your baby if you have a porch or a chair on your balcony or something like that. If it is cold and wintry, you might not want to do that. And so instead, you can bring some plants inside. I recommend if you're going to be chilling in your house for probably, several months, we spend a lot of time at home after we have our baby, to work on making your space beautiful. I'm looking at it right now. I have this bookshelf, and I spent a long time organizing my books in rainbow order. And that sounds like kind of a silly, neurotic thing to do at the end of pregnancy, but it was really important that I could really make sure that all the things I was looking at were beautiful. I spent a little money on some art that I really liked. I bought new plants, and I had someone come over because I don't know how to work a power drill, and help me set up some shelves so that I could put some plants up. So when my family came over to kind of help me prepare for the baby, they spent a lot of time doing things I asked them to do that was purely about aesthetic and didn't have anything to do with logistics, but it was important and it mattered because having plants in my room, having my bed face the window, having my books rainbow organized and having some art, it made those 5 weeks in bed so much more beautiful because I'm not in a cluttered, disorganized space, but I have this window to look out and I have trees that I can see, and I just bought a few plants, and I just have these pretty plants that are cleaning my air, and they look really beautiful and they make me feel good. So also, for nighttime, it's good to have a lamp that you can easily just touch, or an essential oil diffuser or something that has the low light, just something that gives a nice low light ambiance to the evening so you can see easily but without having to turn the lights on, because we want to teach you and your baby about, well, not you, but we want to teach your baby about their circadian rhythms and how to get them to sleep at night. So have a lamp for nighttime. Also, I recommend that whenever you get up to go pee or something, have someone make your bed for you. And we want to be changing the sheets often because you'll be leaking breast milk and you'll be sweating and baby will spit up. And so we're often changing the sheets. It might be good to double make the bed, have someone double make it with an extra layer of all the things so you can just peel that one layer off. So we want to make the bed fresh every day so you get back into a nicely fresh made bed, and have someone get wrappers and from bars and all the little things out of the space and just keep it as clean and tidy as possible with plants. Yes, and I already talked about this beforehand. Protect your consciousness. Turn off stressors. Don't look at the news. In China, it's my understanding that they will, in a strict, following the strict traditions, will remove your phone and books and every kind of external stimulation, and you're just supposed to look into your baby's eyes and breastfeed and nap and chill and not be taking in a lot of other things. And I think that really makes a lot of sense. It looks like my picture didn't load here, but that's okay. So, nature teaches us that healing follows natural rhythms. So, something about, like, if you go, I don't know if you've heard of grounding, when you just step outside on the earth with your bare feet for a couple minutes, or you go touch a tree. Something about that, it just really helps us to relax and feel like, whew, like I am part of nature and I don't have to follow any sort of like construct, around like Western construct around bouncing back. I can just be, and I am perfect. And I'm just like following the rhythm of this season of life and following the rhythm of my body and my body's healing. So that concludes my 5 steps. Next, I want to talk about just a few practical tips to help you make all this happen. Number 1 would be you can schedule rest periods. So that might be like no one is coming over. And this is a time like every day. Like for my example, for my second, my husband would take the baby every day after lunch and I would just take a nap. And I don't like taking naps. So I was kind of like, oh, I don't want a nap. But it was really good for me to do that. We would close the curtains and he would just hold the baby on the couch for a couple hours and baby would sleep skin to skin on him and I would take a nap. Try to create a restful environment and delegate everything as much as possible. So if you can have other people do the shopping and the cooking and the cleaning and the toddler care for as long as possible so that you can just have your own, like your job is just to nurse your baby, cuddle with your baby, and take care of yourself, that is going to help your long-term wellness and help you to rest. With nourishing meals, there are, like I mentioned before, the meal train ideas. You can have pre-made frozen meals be delivered. There are meal delivery service cards. You can have someone like get you just like gift cards to Grubhub or DoorDash or things like that. People could also buy you, instead of like on your baby registry, instead of baby stuff, they could give you gifts for postpartum meals. And there are, I can't remember, Birthing Instincts podcast has this advertisement for often, and it's like a meal delivery service. It's like frozen postpartum meals that they make fresh with like bone broth and grass-fed butter and things like that. And they ship it to you frozen, and people can buy that for you. So that is really cool. You can also rotate friends and family cooking for you. What I did was like, to all the people who said, yeah, I'll bring you some meals, I said, okay, great. Like, could you bring me a meal once a week for a month? And they were like, yes. And I said, okay, then you could be Wednesday, you could be Thursday, you could be Friday. And if you have 5 people bring you a meal once a week, then every, like almost for a whole week, you're getting like a new meal, and a big pot of soup can last you like several rounds. So that's a great way to just have a few people really help you out. Incorporating loving touch. So there are like massage techniques your partner can do, just like giving you gentle shoulder rubs, leg rubs, getting some professional body work, maybe having someone who does cranial sacral come over to your house and do a session for you and your baby. Building your support network. So talk to me about joining my coaching program, to join my postpartum coaching program so you can be part of that. Find a local group in your community, like a mom group. There's also online spaces like the Peaceful Birth Academy is a place where you can like post and ask questions. And tell your friends and your family what it is that you need. So communicate your needs to support you in getting those needs met. And then we want to take care of your emotional health. So we want to just look out for feelings of persistent sadness or anxiety or intrusive thoughts, struggling to sleep or loss of interest in your baby. If any of that comes up, it's really important that we ask for help. Sometimes if we're feeling that way, it's hard for us to be the ones to see that we need help because we're kind of like lost in it a little bit. So having other people know what those signs are and who are checking on you consistently can be really helpful. There are lots of different ways to address postpartum mental health. And so in addition to like getting professional experience or professional support from a therapist who knows about postpartum and from a care provider, I think it's also helpful to look at like what other modalities would do. In Ayurveda, for example, if you are, like I mentioned before, having anxiety or having trouble sleeping, they might, like their modality, and I can't speak to it super well because my knowledge is limited, but it's my understanding that an approach to treat that would involve food and diet changes and lifestyle changes. So looking at like how well you are resting and how much food you're getting and the support that you're getting, all of that really impacts our mental health. I do want to say that intrusive thoughts can be normal after we give birth, and a lot of moms are not prepared for that, and they have no idea that that's a thing. And an intrusive thought is just like a thought that pops in your brain, and it's like, why is that there? That was a weird thought. I did not like that thought. And sometimes it's something like, I don't know, my marriage is in the toilet, or like, and you're like, why would I think that? I love my husband. Just like something, or like they're going to drop my baby if someone else is holding your baby, like a negative thought. And sometimes these thoughts can become really overwhelming, and they do require professional support to help us navigate them. But I also want to say that there's nothing wrong with you if you have this thought come up. I have intrusive thoughts with every single one of my postpartums. I had them worse with my first when I had less support. And it was just like these random thoughts. And what I found was really helpful was me just telling my husband, like, I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and oh, that thought just came up and this is what the thought was, and not struggling with it on my own, but just like communicating to other people what the thoughts were. And we could kind of laugh about it and be like, well, that's a silly thought. And that kind of took some of the power away from it, like vocalizing it. Another tool is think of your thought as a cloud and you are a mountain. So you're a mountain, hi mountain, there's a cloud. The cloud is passing by the mountain. There's the cloud, and now the cloud's gone. So it's just a thought that passes. And if we look at the cloud and we're like, what's wrong with me? There's a cloud, and we like start to like analyze it, we just feed it. And if you can just say, interesting, just observing it, that was a weird thought by thought, I find that that approach and that tool can be really helpful sometimes. So that's just like a little bit of an introduction to postpartum mental wellness. But please, 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 if you are feeling like you're really struggling with these thoughts, definitely reach out for help. There are online resources, there are text resources, like people that you can text and talk to about postpartum wellness, and that's also common in many communities around the US. There are lots of communities with local postpartum support. So I think it'd be good to find those organizations before you have your baby. And here's a little to finalize everything right on the hour, a postpartum self-care checklist. So we want to make sure that we're resting every day, and if not all day long, hopefully for most of the day. We're eating warm, nourishing foods. We're receiving loving touch. It could be just your partner holding you. It could be grandma comes over and gives you a big hug. Getting a professional to do some body work. You're connecting with support online, with me, in your community, with other moms that you know in your family. You have some connection to nature, whether you're looking out a window, maybe you can go and sit outside a little bit. There's plants in your room. You're staying hydrated by drinking warm drinks throughout the day. We're monitoring your emotional well-being. You have support and a plan to help make sure that you're doing okay emotionally after you have your baby. And we're honoring our boundaries. So we're saying no to the people who we don't want to come over, or we're saying, yes, I want support, or I want a meal, but I don't want a visitor yet. I just want you to drop it off, right? We have the boundaries in place so that we feel safe to do what we need to do postpartum, and we're not bending over backwards for anybody else. This is the time in your life for you to be served and for you to be supported. And you choosing to do that, you can recognize that that is an investment in your lifelong well-being and an investment in your whole family's health, because everyone needs the mother. As all of your children, they need the mother, and they all look towards you all the time for regulation. And if you can step out into life after you have your baby feeling like, okay, I am good. I am getting support and I got lots of good food and I had my time to rest, and I naturally want to start doing things again. It would feel empowering to wear my baby and do the dishes. It would feel empowering to go pick up my toddler from school, to kind of start adding some things in instead of just being thrown into life way too soon, juggling way too much. It's like you always will be underwater, and we want to send you back into life on top of things to the best of our ability. Like, postpartum isn't perfect. There are challenges for sure, but when we get our needs met and we take the time to rest, postpartum can just be so much more positive. That concludes our workshop today. Thank you so much for being part of it. This was really fun. I loved getting to chat with all of you about postpartum. I will upload the video that I made to school so you can watch it. And if any of you are not in my coaching program and you're interested in joining for a birth or postpartum, just send me a DM on school. And yeah, I hope you all have a beautiful day and a beautiful, beautiful birth and a beautiful postpartum. Bye.